Will you ever let someone back in your life after they tried to shamelessly break up your marriage? Personally, I never thought I would, but that is exactly what happened. For some background, let me tell you that my mother-in-law, Anne, never liked me. It wasn't because of me particularly. She was just extra possessive of her son, my husband, Dominic. Anne's husband had divorced her and abandoned them when Dominic was 2. After that, Anne clung to him for everything. It was downright unhealthy, and even Dominic understood that. But Anne was still his mom, so he did his best not to make her too upset. Before me, Anne was able to successfully drive away all the women who tried to date Dominic. It was a mess every time, and she did some nasty stuff to get rid of them. She had also tried several things with me, but I was stubborn enough not to flee because of her antics. I really loved Dominic and stayed. Dominic also did his best to stand up for me. When we announced our engagement, Anne came to my house to beg me to cancel it, saying, "I can't lose my only son, Lila. You have to understand me. I don't have anyone else." "No, I don't understand you, Anne. Dominic loves me and wants to be with me. He loves you too, and he will always be your son. Why are you trying to destroy his happiness? He will always have a special place for you." "I will not share him with anyone. He is my son and I should be his everything. You better cancel this wedding and move away from him. If you don't do what I say, I will destroy you. I'm asking you nicely. Go away." I put my foot down and refused to do as she said. In retaliation, she literally cancelled my entire wedding, pretending to be me. She also tried to get me fired from my office. Dominic now understood the severity of the situation and finally went no contact. We had a small wedding and lived happily for 5 years without Anne in our lives. Several years passed and we shut down all contact with Anne. We also ended up having a beautiful son named Jason. Dominic and I were very happy, but I could tell he was sad his mom wasn't there to share his happiness. His armor was starting to chip, and I knew he would give in sooner or later. And when Anne contacted us from a new number, desperately begging for forgiveness, Dominic broke down and said, "Please give my mom a chance, Lila. I know there is a lot of bad blood between you two, but I'm the only one she has. I want Jason to know his grandma." "Believe me, Dominic, I want that too. I want Jason to know his only grandmother since my mom is already dead. But I don't feel comfortable having her back. I simply don't trust Anne." "She's really sorry, Lila. Just give her a chance and let's see. You don't have to worry. I'm sure she will never hurt Jason. She isn't a monster, Lila. It would mean the world to me if you agree." I gave in, guys. I didn't want my son and husband to despise me for not giving Anne a chance. It had been years and Anne really did sound remorseful. We met with her without Jason, and she did offer what we felt were heartfelt apologies, so after a lot of careful consideration, we resumed contact. We didn't go all out at once. Dominic and I were super careful and slowly started to build back the relationship. She was only allowed supervised visitation with Jason and didn't get to take him anywhere without us. Anne never complained and even acted civilly around me. However, my instincts were stuck, screaming, and I felt weary. I could see that Anne still hated me, and no matter how hard she tried, I saw right through her. But there was nothing I could do about it. Dominic was happy to have his mom back, while Jason also ended up having an amazing relationship with her. Everything was going fine the way it was. Everyone was happy with the arrangements until Anne requested to have Jason alone for a day. Apparently she wanted to bond better with him and said that she deserved it after listening to us for 2 years. Dominic immediately begged me to agree, and so did Jason. There was nothing I could do, actually, so I agreed. Everyone was happy, but my head was making some noises about this. My weariness did trouble me, so I decided to teach him something. I said, "I know you love Grandma a lot, Jason. However, you do know that sometimes people can end up being dangerous to you, right?" "Yes, Mom, I remember that. Are you worried about me, Mom?" Yes, son, I'm worried about you. Do you remember how I taught you to call 911 once you sense danger? Yeah, Mom, I remember that. I know how to ask for help if I need it. Don't worry, Mom, I can take care of myself. Jason's last line made me laugh, but I was a little relieved knowing that he knew how to ask for help if necessary. I had to let him go sometimes, so teaching him to ask for help was necessary. This gave me some hope when I dropped him off at Anne's house that day. When I was back to pick Jason up, my worst nightmares came true. Anne and Jason weren't home. Instead of panicking immediately, I decided to think rationally. They may have gone out to the park or to a restaurant. With that hope in mind, I called Anne to ask her where they were. However, Anne wasn't picking up the phone. The fear inside me grew and I started to get really scared. Nothing had prepared me for what I was about to find out. When Anne finally picked up the phone, I said, "Where on earth are you, Anne? I came by your house to pick up my son, but none of you are here. The door's also locked." "It was a nice surprise, wasn't it, Lil?" "I don't understand what you're trying to say, Anne. I need to know where you are and where my son is." "You would really like to know, wouldn't you, Lila? What if I am not in the mood to tell you where we are?" I was starting to get ticked off by the way Anne was speaking to me. I'm a very straightforward woman and don't like beating around the bush. I always come straight to the point and am vocal about everything I do, so Anne's stupid game was really getting on my nerves. I also had no idea why she was being this way. She did sound super cheerful and mischievous. That was a pretty big red flag, and I was starting to get bad vibes from her. I said with a little irritation, "Sorry, Anne. I am not in the mood for jokes and games right now. It's pretty late, and Jason needs to have dinner and go to sleep. He has school tomorrow, so I would really appreciate it if you could tell me where you are." "No can do, Lila. Like I said, I don't feel like telling you where we are. But don't worry, your son and I are having a lot of fun." "This is all irrelevant information, Anne. I need my son back right now. If you don't want to tell me where you are, you better come back home immediately and hand Jason over. I am not playing around." "I'm also not playing around, Lila. You want your son back? Well, guess what, my dear daughter-in-law? You won't be getting him back ever again." That was the moment when I knew something was horribly wrong. My blood ran cold, and millions of bad thoughts raced through my brain. I was afraid of Anne doing something stupid. I knew she was up to no good. I wish I would have listened to my gut. I actually started to shake a little from fear. Anne's tone changed drastically when she told me that she won't be giving Jason back. It was threatening and downright mean. It sent chills down my back, and I forced myself to remain calm because I knew panicking won't do much good. What I did do was start recording the call because my instincts were screaming at me to do so. Then I said, "What are you talking about, Anne? This is not at all funny. Bring me my son back. I'm not joking." "I'm not joking either, Lila. I already told you that you won't get your son back. God, I wish I could see your face right now." "Please, Anne, don't be like this. You are making me panic. This is not okay. I need Jason back. Just tell me where you are and I will pick him up." Anne laughed at me while I was in a panic. Yes, guys, she straight up started to laugh at my useless attempt to make her talk. Even over the phone, I could tell that she was acting very unhinged. Now, I was getting even more scared and didn't know what to do. I had half a mind to jump into my car and go looking around town to find them. But then again, I was still hoping Anne was scaring me or simply messing with me out of spite. Well, I was right about one thing. She did everything out of spite, but things were worse than I had imagined. My doubts were confirmed when Anne said through her laughter, "Oh, are you scared, my little daughter-in-law? Do you feel sad that you can't see your son because of me? How does it feel to have someone take your son away from you?" "Why are you saying these things, Anne? What does this even mean? I'm scared out of my mind, Anne. You can't do this. Please, just give me back my son." "This is how I felt when you took my son away from me. It doesn't feel so good when you are the victim, does it now, Lila?" "What? Anne, you are acting insane. You don't know what you're doing. For God's sake, drop this madness. You didn't stop pursuing my son when I told you to stop. You didn't listen to me when I told you to go away from our lives. You didn't even end your wedding when I begged you to. When I took matters into my own hands, you turned my son against me and made him go no contact. Do you think I would let you get away with that? Absolutely not, Lila. It was then I became sure that Anne was acting out of spite. Her hatred for me had absolutely made her lose whatever little sanity she had. I can't describe to you guys how nerve-wracking it was to listen to her talk. The more she talked, the more I was starting to shake. My mind was full of fear, and I kept pacing her driveway, unsure of what to do. I continued talking to her, saying, "What you are doing and saying is absolutely ridiculous, Anne. I didn't make Dominic go no contact with you. It was his decision along with mine. He loves me and I love him. If you had just accepted this, you would have been in our lives." "Oh, stop that nonsense, Lila. My son has no use for you. We were happy even before you made your disrupting appearance in our lives. My son had started to divide his attention and love. I wasn't going to sit by and watch it happen." "You are truly delusional, Anne. You can't expect your son to stay single forever. This was bound to happen someday. We are happy, Anne. You should understand that." "Well, I don't care, Lila. I'm unhappy. I needed to do something about it. I asked you nicely many times to go away from our lives, but you ended up taking away my son too. I had to do something. I needed to do something, and I finally did it. I stole your son from you, just like you stole my son from me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mother-in-law was so unhinged that she kept her anger within her for 10 years. She was waiting for us to let her back in so that she could teach me a lesson. She was truly insane, and the thought of her harming my son brought tears to my eyes. With the phone shaking in my hand, I put her on loudspeaker while I furiously typed a message to my husband detailing everything. Meanwhile, I was also trying to stay connected to Anne, hoping that I would be able to get some clue about where she was. I carefully said, "Listen to me, Anne. You need to cut this out. I know you are mad at me and all, but leave my son out of this." "Oh, please, I will do whatever I want. You took my son, so it's only fair that I take yours." "This is wrong, Anne. Think about Dominic. You love your son, and what you're doing is going to make him hate you." "He will come around, Lila. Dominic is my son, and he knows that his mother is more important than anyone. He came around after the no contact, didn't he? He will do it this time too. Then me, him, and my grandson will live happily without you." "You are wrong about that, Anne. Dominic will never forgive you for this. In fact, he is currently out of his office trying to look for you." "It won't do him any good. He will never find me and Jason. I will tell him our location when Dominic finally realizes that he made a mistake marrying you." "I've had enough of your nonsense, Anne. Tell me your location, or I promise you I will call the cops on you. I will hunt you down." Anne laughed at me again. This laughter was just downright chilling to my ears. It was clear to me that she had carefully planned this and wasn't going to get caught so easily. Still, I thought that maybe she would change her mind once I threatened her with the cops. However, she didn't show any sign of fear at all. She was happily laughing at me and said, "Good luck with calling the cops, Lila. Believe me, it'll do you no good." What do you mean? What have you done? Jason and I are not even in your state anymore, my dear daughter-in-law, so calling the cops won't be of any help, and by the time they track me down, I would be gone already." "What is wrong with you, Anne? You are a psychotic woman who needs to be locked up." "That will never happen, Lila. It is only a matter of time before Dominic gives in and returns to me. Jason loves me too, so I am sure we will be able to convince him to live happily without us. You took one person from me, I will take two from you." I was in the middle of having a panic attack, thinking about the worst. Dominic was already down at the police station to file a report while I was standing in Anne's driveway, and kept talking to her to find out more. But the moment she said that she took my son out of state, my heart shattered and a coldness washed over me. I was scared for my son and desperately prayed to God that Jason remembered what I taught him. Just when I was about to break down, There was a loud banging sound on the phone. I could hear my mother-in-law saying to someone, "What is going on, Jason? Why have you locked yourself in the bathroom?" "I know you tried to kidnap me and that you want to take me away from my mom. You lied to me, saying that my parents wanted to surprise me. I heard you talk over the phone and tell Mom that you won't take me back to them." "Don't be such a child, Jason. We are having fun here, right? Your dad will be here soon. I'm sure of it. Then the three of us will have a good life here. We don't need your mother anymore." Anne was trying to coerce my son into coming out of the bathroom. I was a little relieved to hear his voice and know that he was physically okay. My son is a brave boy, and he picked up on the fact that Anne had lied to him to take him away. It made me so mad to hear the details of Anne's plan. I wanted to go and strangle the life out of her. Anne was distracted in her attempts to get Jason to cooperate, but I took this chance to yell over the phone and talk to Jason, hoping that he would hear me. "My baby boy, Jason, Mom is here. I promise you and your dad will get you out of this, Jason. Be brave for me, please." "There is no use trying to make false promises to your son, Lila. You and I both know that he will stay with me from now on. There is no way you will ever find us." "Don't worry, Mom. I'm okay. I called the police on the hotel landline like you had taught me. They will be here soon. I'm still on the phone with them, Mom. It was a cordless phone, so I took it with me." The moment Jason said those words, I felt a world of relief. The shaking in my legs slowly started to go away, and a deep sense of pride also resided in my heart. My son hadn't forgotten the little lessons that I had taught him. Despite loving his grandmother, he was able to recognize exactly when she was being a danger to him. My boy is clever and brave. Hearing the fact that he had not only called the cops, but also locked himself so that Anne wouldn't harm him was super clever. He remembered all my teachings and used his own presence of mind to make sure he was safe from Anne as much as he could. I continued to talk to Jason, trying to give him some encouragement, while Anne absolutely went crazy at him. "What did you do, you little devil? You called the cops on me, Jason? I'm your grandmother." "Do you think I didn't teach my son anything, Anne? He knows exactly what to do when someone becomes an unsafe person. He is not stupid, unlike you, Anne. Your game is up." "I can still take him away, Lila. He's still with me, and you don't even know where you are." "Jason, there is no use trying to call the cops. I will take you and leave again." "You won't be able to do that, Grandma. The 911 lady is saying that the cops are already at the hotel, and you can't get me out before they come. I won't come out. Mom, we're in Colorado. Come and get me, Mom." It blew my mind to hear that Anne had literally taken my son 2 states over. Yes, she made sure that we wouldn't be able to reach him in a short time. I wouldn't have known their location if Jason hadn't revealed this little information. My boy did everything possible to make sure he could be rescued. I was fuming at Anne's audacity while she continued to make displeased sounds at Jason and said, "It was a mistake bringing you, Jason. You are a wicked child, just like your mother. I should have gone after my son after all." "That wouldn't have worked either, Anne. Your son would not have supported your insane behavior. In fact, he is reporting you to the cops just as we speak." No, he wouldn't do that to me. Dominic wouldn't do that to his own mother." "Why don't you ask him then? I'm already at the police station. You can ask your son if he supports you." That's right, guys. While talking to them, Dominic had driven over from the police station, which was just a few blocks away from Anne's house. He had already reached the place and looked very angry and worried. I had been texting him throughout this time, so he knew how Jason had protected himself. Our goal now was to keep Anne distracted till the cops barged into her hotel room. I immediately handed Dominic the phone since he was ready to burst with anger. He roared at Anne and said, "Mom, what have you done? How dare you kidnap my son and think I would support you? How could you do this?" "Why are you so angry with me, Dominic? I only wanted my son back. I wanted you back, so I did this. I didn't hurt Jason. I just wanted to teach your wicked wife a lesson." Don't you dare insult my wife and try to justify your actions, Mom. You are the wicked one here and no one else. After what you did today, I regret ever getting back in contact with you." "What? How could you say that to me, Dominic? I'm your mother. I should come before anyone else in your life. Your wife has poisoned you against me." "That's it, Mom. You need to stop talking. I don't want to hear another word from you. The fact that you won't even take responsibility for your actions says everything I need to know. I have already filed a police report and will be pressing charges against you. And I will make sure you go to jail." "What? You want me to go to jail?" "Absolutely, Mom. You are going to pay for what you tried to do. You are never getting forgiven. We will be filing a restraining order, and don't even think about coming back in our lives again. You are dead to me." Dominic was super angry and literally poured his heart out. He was willing to put his mom in jail now that he knew how horrible she could be. I was proud of my husband for standing up to his mom and making her face some serious but well-deserved consequences. Anne, however, was devastated and kept crying about how unfair it was. She went on for like a minute before the cops barged into the hotel room. When the cops came, Anne soon turned to begging us to save her. She cried and screamed about how she made a mistake and would never do this again. She was desperate, but no one listened to her. Dominic and I literally cried into each other as we heard the cops arrest Anne and rescue our son. Our nightmare was finally over. After the cops arrested Anne, they took Jason down to the police station to keep him safe until Dominic and I reached him. We immediately booked a flight and went to get our precious son back. Jason cried a lot when he was back in our arms. We cried with him too. We promised never to let him get out of our sight again. And we also awarded him heavily for being such a clever boy. We went back home when the cops told us that they didn't need us in Colorado anymore. Anne was still in jail when we left Colorado. She had spent most of her money on the hotel and flight, so she couldn't pay her bail. Everyone in the family knew what she had tried to do because we told them. All of them were extremely horrified and went into contact with her too. So she couldn't get anyone to post bail for her either. Anne did end up going to jail like everyone had wanted. She did seem remorseful at court when she saw us, but the damage was done. The judge didn't go lightly on her either. She went through a psychological evaluation, and it was found that she didn't have severe mental health issues. So Anne was just a plain bad person. She actually got a jail term of 5 years. Dominic and I rejoiced when we heard her sentencing. We also got restraining orders that we will continue to keep as long as we can. Jason has been out into therapy to deal with what happened, but he is still the happy kid he was. My family is finally free from that poisonous woman, and we are happy to be back safe and sound in our home. Hello guys, this is Layla telling you a story about her life. I'm using fake names, and please forgive me for that. I like my privacy and I don't want my kids to come across the story right now. I will tell them in due time. This story is about how my dad, Van, and brother Harry threw me out of the house because I was a girl. Yes, my dad thought that I was useless and not worthy of his name just because I was a girl. It's not like my childhood was spent in neglect. My mom, Gina, was actually a very loving mom, and my family was okay, if not perfect. My dad was kind to me, and I rarely saw him anyway. He was busy with work, so it's not like he had a lot of time to spare for me. But I did notice that whenever he was free, he used to prefer spending time with my brother. It always made me sad and wondered why he was my dad's favorite. As we grew up, the favoritism was subtle, but couldn't be missed. Harry even picked up on it and used to boast that Dad loved him more. Mom always reprimanded him, but Dad actually never said much. I stupidly thought that it was maybe because Harry was the class topper and I was not a top scorer like him. So I started to work hard and study more to get the best grades in my class, but still nothing changed. Dad still preferred to spend time with Harry over me. In my teen years, I did hold some resentment about this, but still loved both my father and brother. I had slowly accepted that things are just this way and I cannot change them. Things were going fairly well in my life, but everything turned into a nightmare after my 18th birthday. The day when we celebrated my birthday, my dad was in an exceptional mood. He was joking around and being super happy. I thought that he was just happy for me, but I was wrong. I was so desperate for his love and attention that I started to interpret his actions differently. So in a few months, when he approached me with Harry and said these things, I was caught off guard. He said, "Layla, you need to move out of the house now that you are 18. I'm done housing you." Dad? Why, are you joking right now? This is not funny. Who said I'm joking? Do I look like I'm joking? Dad was looking serious. But I simply couldn't take his words seriously. I couldn't imagine that he would do this to me. I couldn't ask Mom what was going on because she was away on a family trip. She was with my grandma, who was nearing death and wanted a last trip with her family. My mom had left just the day before, so I didn't know what to do or think. I said, "What did I do, Dad? Why do you want to kick me out? I don't understand this." "Wow, you can't understand a simple sentence, Layla? Dad was right when he said that you are exceptionally stupid." "What? Dad? Do you think I'm stupid? What is going on?" "Listen to me, Layla. If you really think that I would house you all your life, you are wrong. Now that you're 18, I'm not obliged to take care of you anymore. I'm serious, Layla. I want you out by next month." My father's horrible tone brought tears to my eyes. I was crying so hard that I didn't know how to calm myself down. My father was being downright mean to me, and I didn't even know why. Harry was just standing there and smirking at me while I started to cry. Dad didn't even come to comfort me. His face said how little he actually cared about me. I was still in complete disbelief that my dad would do something like this, that he could be so heartless. I said through my tears, "Why are you being like this, Dad? I'm your daughter. I know I'm 18 and you shouldn't have to take care of me, but why are you being so mean?" "Do you want me to shower you with rose petals and tell you gently? You will not get that from me. You should have seen this coming." "But I don't understand, Dad. What did I even do to deserve such treatment? You promised to send Harry to college, but you are kicking me out once I am 18? Why are you doing this?" "I don't need a useless girl when I already have a son. You are seriously just a burden for me and nothing else." "Dad, what are you saying? I am your daughter, your child. Just because I'm not a man doesn't mean I'm useless." Dad and Harry simply laughed out loud when I said that. I was in tears while my dad and brother were straight up laughing at me. I felt small and insignificant. I felt like I was a joke to them and everyone around me. It absolutely broke my heart and shattered me from the inside. I wanted to dig a hole and bury myself in it. Meanwhile, Dad and Harry had a great time humiliating me for fun, and they weren't even done yet. Dad said, "Do you think I wanted you, Layla? The moment I found out I was having a girl, I wanted to get rid of you. But your mother got emotional and threatened to leave me. That's why I had to grin and bear while you came into this world." You never wanted me? You wanted to never have me?" "Why would anyone want a useless girl like you, Layla? Don't you see the business world is not for women? They are only good for bringing in capital with their inheritance." "You see that, Layla? Harry knows what's up. He doesn't blindly follow sentiments and knows that women are only good for home life and their inheritance. I mean, that was the reason I didn't abort you in the first place. If Gina had divorced me, I would have lost her inheritance from her father." I couldn't believe how my dad was treating me and my mom like business deals. He was showing no emotion whatsoever and was saying some horrible things about both me and Mom. It made me feel disgusted. I was finally seeing what monsters my father and brother were. My father had really successfully groomed my brother into a mini version of himself. Harry wasn't innocent, though. I had observed him before, and he knew exactly what to say to get our father's praise. However, I had always refused to accept their patriarchal ideals. I said, I can't believe you would talk about your own family this way. You two are nothing but monsters who have no respect for women. I'm glad you figured it out, Layla. I was having a really hard time pretending to love and care for you. In reality, I don't care about you even in the slightest. Yes, Dad, I can see that now. It's all starting to make sense. I thought you liked Harry better because he got better grades than me, but you didn't change even when I crossed his grades in school. Now, I know that you had no good reason to hate me. Oh, please, Layla. Dad doesn't even care about you enough to hate you. Even if you get good grades, you're still useless. All you are good for is to work under someone. You will never be a boss like a man like me would be. You are an absolute horrible man, Harry. I had no idea that my own family could be so misogynistic. That is why we are sparing you from calling us family, Layla. Believe me, I have no interest in telling people that I have a stupid daughter. If you were all obedient and sweet, I may have considered letting you leave until I found a businessman's son to marry you too. But your awful mouth would ruin that. So the best option is to kick you out now that you're 18. It was then I realized that my father was serious about what he wanted to do. He really was kicking me out because he didn't want me to cause trouble in his family. When we started this conversation, I was crying tears of grief at the way my dad was treating me, but now that I knew why he was kicking me out and making me suffer, I was feeling nothing but anger. I said, Fine, you want to kick me out, right? You will get your wish. I will leave as soon as possible. Now, that wasn't too difficult, was it? If you had been so obedient for the last few years, I really would have come up with a better plan. Who knows, I may have even set you up with a good husband. There will be no need for that, Dad. I wouldn't marry someone you chose because he would for sure end up being like you. You think I cannot do anything in life just because I'm a girl? I will prove you wrong. And moving out is the first step of my plan. Oh, God, you really are in the mood to make us laugh today, Layla. The little dreams you have in your head are truly ridiculous. Go and try, but don't come crying when things don't go according to your plan. I would rather die than come back here. I won't be somewhere where I am not appreciated or even loved. Thanks for setting me straight, Dad. I promise I will never forget that, and won't let you either. I said that and ran to my room. Once I was inside, I broke down again, thinking about how I would soon have to abandon my childhood room. I was a crying mess and didn't know how to control myself. I couldn't reach Mom because her vacation home didn't have a signal. So there was nothing I could do but cry that night. For a single night, I let my emotions take over me and I cried my heart out. The next morning, I woke up with resolve and set out to find my own destiny. That same afternoon, I managed to get 2 jobs in 2 separate stores. It was going to be a hassle, but I would get by somehow. I also needed a place to stay until I could get accepted into a college. It was then that my boyfriend, Noel, offered to let me stay at his place. His parents loved me a lot, and they were ready to welcome me with open arms. So I went back home, packed a bag, and left the house for good. When I finally got settled into Noel's house, I started to work at my job straight away. A week went by in a blur until it was time for my mother to come back. I found her at Noel's house when I came home from school. She looked really stricken and said, "What is this I'm hearing, Layla? You moved out of the house?" "I don't know what Dad and Harry told you, but I didn't simply move out, Mom. I was actually kind of kicked out." "What? What are you saying? Who kicked you out?" "Dad did, Mom. The day after you left, Dad sat me down and told me that I needed to be out of the house since I am now 18. He doesn't want to take responsibility anymore." "That is a bunch of nonsense, Layla. You are our daughter. You will never be a burden. I don't know what has gotten into Van." "Mom, it's all right. You don't have to protect Dad. He made it clear how he never wanted me and only had me because you threatened to leave him. He told me in no uncertain terms that I was useless because I was a girl." Mom looked shocked. and very sad at what I said. I knew that she had tried her best to make my dad love me. I mean, Dad even controlled himself and only kicked me out when Mom wasn't around to stop him. He was somewhat scared of messing with her despite his rant on how women are useless. Mom did have an aura of authority, plus her own assets make her extremely valuable for anyone. I guess Dad really didn't want to make her angry, but he didn't realize that Mom would eventually find out the truth. Maybe he thought I wouldn't sell him out. Too bad I didn't care what Mom thought of him and Harry anymore. I told her the truth, and Mom looked very disturbed after that. She said, "Oh dear Layla, you are not useless, my girl. I hope you know that. I tried so hard to change Van's misogynistic attitude. I really thought it was working, but I see that I was wrong." Yes, somehow he managed to turn Harry into a mini version of himself as well. It was rather hard to watch. I tried so hard, but I failed in the end. He was so good at faking his love and care that he even got me fooled. I really should have left when he had asked me to abort you. I understand why you stayed, Mom. I know you didn't want to raise me in a broken home. You tried your best. Unfortunately, Dad stayed because he wanted your inheritance. I'm sorry, but I wanted you to know that. My mom smiled at me. That was a knowing smile that she gave me. I realized that maybe my mom wasn't in the dark about my father's intentions with her inheritance. She lived with that man for over 20 years after all. Mom actually patted my head and said, "I know about that, Layla. Your father cared a lot about my inheritance. I thought I could use it to make him love you. I was so stupid. I'm sorry he put you through this, Layla. You can come home, you know. Van wouldn't kick you out. It's also my house after all." "I know, Mom. I also knew that you would try to take me back home, but I don't want to go back." "You don't have to be worried about Van or Harry, dear. I will put them in their place. You just concentrate on your studies and upcoming graduation." "Mom, look, it's not because I'm scared of Dad and Harry. Their words hit me in the heart. I don't want to go back and prove to them that I'm weak and useless. I want to make it big and show them how wrong they are." Wow, my daughter has grown up. All right then, Layla. If that's what you want to do, I'm all in. Just promise that you will ask me for help if necessary. I literally have the best mom in the world. God may have messed up when he gave me my dad and brother, but he really made my life better by sending me my mom. She was one of those few people who supported me when I had nothing. I was in a very dark place, and the only light at the end of the tunnel included my mom and Noel. I graduated high school with flying colors and immediately got accepted into a prestigious college for a business degree. Noel was also at par with me, and we ended up going there together. While he got a scholarship, I couldn't qualify for one due to my parents' income, but my mom ended up giving me money to cover tuition while I worked my way out of the remaining debt. I continued to work while finishing up my degree. Once Noel and I were out of college, we decided to start our own business, which started to do really well. We were business partners, and our company really took off in 5 years. Eventually, we got married and ended up having 2 kids. My father and brother were not invited to my wedding. I actually went no contact with them. Even my mom doesn't share any information about me with them. Oh, by the way, Mom ended up divorcing my father for what he did to me. She ended up getting half of his business, which Dad bought back from her. This causes a financial strain on his business. Eventually, this, coupled with a series of horrible decisions by his loving son, landed up in a lot of financial debt. I found out about my father's sinking business from my husband Noel. He brought up the topic at dinner with my mom. He said, "Hey, Layla, did you hear that your father's business is in ruins now?" "Really? I never bothered to think about what he was up to. Did you hear anything, Mom?" "Yes, I actually did know about this. Your father and brother made some horrible mistakes, which have almost ruined his company. The prices of shares have absolutely dipped. So much for having men run the company. How bad is it?" "Pretty bad, actually. I took a look at his shares, and I think you can easily buy him out." Noel said that because he knew what I was thinking about. I did want to get back at my father for what he did to me, and since it was a family business, I didn't want it to end up in someone else's hands. My dear husband was thinking along these lines and said, "I know what you're thinking, Layla. You can buy out your father. It would be a great opportunity for you to show how far you have come." I wholeheartedly support Noel's idea, Layla. You should definitely do it if you have the means. I do have the means, actually. You know what? I will do it. I will buy the business from Dad, and he won't even know who took his business away from him. I wanted to buy out my father because it would be my ultimate form of revenge. However, I didn't want him to find out about what I did. No, instead, I bought shares through Noel and even my new company so that he wouldn't find out what hit him. I took one look at his shares and knew that I could easily afford it without breaking the bank. My business was worth double his, actually. So I ended up buying the majority shares of my dad's company. Now I was going to sit on the board of directors at not only one company, but two. I didn't tell Dad about it till the first board meeting that happened at his company. Oh boy, he was shocked to see me. He said, What are you doing here, Layla?" "Good to see you too, Dad. Long time, isn't it? I see that your precious little son isn't here for you." "He's no longer a part of the board. I will represent myself from now on." "I'm not surprised, actually. His mess-ups have made your company tank. At least you made the right call by excluding him. Looks like there is hope for you." "And who are you to tell me whether or not my company has hope? A woman like you doesn't know anything, so you don't get to say what I can and cannot do." "My Dad, I see that you are still a misogynistic idiot. Well, you would have to get rid of that since you will be working with me now." "What? What do you mean?" "It means that I am now on the board of directors and have bought the majority of your company." Dad looked at me like I had lost my mind. In his thick head, he simply couldn't imagine this happening in any universe. So he was really taken aback when I said those words out loud. He looked at me in disbelief and said, No, that can't be true. That is impossible. You are joking. You can't have the majority of shares in my company." "Why don't you take a look at all the documents and find out for yourself?" "This is impossible. Where did you even get the money? This can't be happening." "You still underestimate me, Dad. Can't say I'm surprised. Old habits do die hard. Well, I guess you never cared to learn, and that I co-own a fairly successful company in LA, the company under which I bought most of your shares." Dad's face lit up with realization. He was now connecting the dots and figuring out that the company was co-owned by me. He never bothered to learn the names of women in the business industry and didn't care about me enough to know that Noel was my husband or my boyfriend when we were younger. So it never occurred to him that I was the one buying his company. He was still in disbelief, so he took the documents from me and read through them. The look of horror and defeat on his face was enough to avenge my younger self. I finally felt like I had kept my promise. I showed Dad how wrong he was. I won't bore you guys with the rest of the story. If you're interested, I will leave a short summary of what happened in my life after this. As you know, I ended up taking the majority of control over my dad's company. I was making some major decisions which ended up giving great results. It was a bit of a hassle to manage two businesses, but I made it work just fine. I'm happy to say that both my businesses are doing well now. Dad has tried to mend bridges after I took over his company. However, I wasn't that interested in it anymore. He has to support his useless son, Harry, who is not even allowed to be on the premises of our business. Dad has apologized for how he treated me in the past and ended up selling his portion of the company to me. This made Harry mad, but I took his offer as well. So now I'm in full control of Dad's company while he has been forced to retire. And guess what? His precious son got nothing. Harry is now working at other businesses instead of being able to work for his father's company. No, I didn't give him a job because no one wanted me to hire him at my dad's company. Looks like he finally got his lesson about how misogyny and entitlement can ruin his life. As for me, I got to prove myself while expanding my assets by buying my father's company from him. Sometimes in life, I regret not having a good family. I see people around me surrounded by loving parents and siblings, and it makes me envy them. I never had a chance with my father. He died when I was 2.5. I don't even have many memories of him. It was always me, Harper, my mom, Ruth, and my brother Benji. Ever since Benji was born, I considered him my best friend. I loved him a lot and often helped my mom take care of him. I really did love my family, but I later realized that they had no love for me. It all started when I was 14. My brother Benji was 12 at the time and really tall for his age. He was a voracious eater and was way stronger than me, who was skinny and a little weak. I don't know what made Benji snap, but he stopped being my loving brother a while ago. He was now downright mean to me and often did things that would end up hurting me. He would steal and break my things out of anger and pull my hair whenever I was near him. At first, I had chalked it up to him being stupid, but I slowly realized that he was downright bullying me. My mom was no help since she worked all day and only returned at night. Initially, Benji would act nice when Mom was around, but that changed as well. Still, my mom simply couldn't bring herself to care. One thing I must say is that Benji was a great student and actually topped his classes. Meanwhile, I was pretty average and sometimes struggled with grades. Benji saw this as a reason to bully me any way possible. What started out as making fun of me and insulting me slowly turned into something horrible. Benji would hit me and shove me whenever I disagreed with something he was doing. He would throw things at me, and one time he almost pushed me down the stairs. My mom knew and saw everything but never came to my rescue. She never even yelled at Benji for assaulting and humiliating me continuously. It was only my mother's twin sister, Aunt Helen, who saw the signs and begged me to tell her everything. She said, "Is there something going on at the house? You need to tell me, Harper. I will help you." "No, Aunt Helen, everything's fine. You don't have to worry." "But I have seen your bruises, Harper. I know something is wrong." "Oh, you know how clumsy and weak I am, Aunt Helen. I always end up tripping and hurting myself. It's nothing really." I knew that my aunt was worried, and it really warmed my heart that she cared. No one else did that for me. My mom and brother didn't care. Still, I didn't want to see them in trouble, so I kept my mouth shut. I let the abuse continue for years until one day I couldn't take it anymore. I still remember that very clearly. I was 17 and a few months away from graduation. Benji tried to choke me because I dared to take back my laptop from him that he had borrowed without permission. That was the night when I broke down and went to my mother for help. I said through tears, "Mom, I can't take this anymore. Please just talk to Benji and do something. He has crossed all limits. You need to stop him." "What do you expect me to do exactly? I told him to stop, but he didn't listen." "But you don't even punish him, Mom. He needs to be disciplined. Every time it's me who has to let go and forgive him, even though I'm the one with the scars." I was desperate, guys. Mom never stood up for me, and I didn't know why. It was almost like she hated me. Sometimes she would join Benji in making fun of me, but I had hoped that she would at least stop the physical abuse when it got this bad. But I was so wrong about my mom. No matter how much I loved and forgave my family, they would never change themselves for me. I would always be their punching bag. That became clear when my mom angrily said, "I will not discipline my lovely boy for a useless daughter like you. You deserve what Benji did to you because you are a good-for-nothing girl. I'm pretty sure you will amount to nothing in life, so I will not waste my time and energy on you." "Mom, how could you say that to me? I am also your child. You are showing favoritism towards your son because of nothing. Are you deaf along with being dumb? I just told you that my son is a sweetheart. He is doing so well in school and will definitely make me proud one day. You, on the other hand, will only become a failure and bring shame to me. Maybe if Benji smacks you around a little, you will finally learn to do better. Mom, are you really encouraging Benji to hit me? You are encouraging my younger brother to raise his hands at me. I couldn't believe what my mom had just said. She was actively encouraging Benji to not only bully, but also assault me. It made my blood run cold, and I was actually scared for my well-being. Just imagine that, guys. I was a vulnerable 17-year-old girl who felt unsafe around her own family. And her family, instead of being a protective shield from danger, were actually discussing how they would abuse her. I kid you not, but my mom was straight up laughing at me and cheerfully said, "Why not? I don't see what's the problem with that. Like I said, maybe it will end up putting some sense into that thick brain of yours. What do you say, Benji?" I doubt hitting Harper would help her become clever. She's always been a dumb girl with no hope for the future. But for the sake of her future, I'm willing to try it. She's my sister after all. See, your brother is being such a darling, and all you can do is complain. You need to quit being such a diva, or else I will kick you out. My house is not a place for drama. Do you understand that, Harper? One more bad word about him, and I will throw you to the streets. I hung my head in shame, and to hide my tears, my heart was breaking inside, and I was actually shaking. I did my best to run back into my room, but I kept stumbling because my legs wouldn't stop shaking. Mom and Benji saw me struggling and proceeded to laugh loudly at me while calling me names. I somehow managed to go into my room and lay on the bed, hoping that Benji wouldn't barge in to do what our mother asked. I was terrified of how far he would go. I had two options that day, guys. I could have stayed quiet and just taken whatever abuse that my mom and brother were putting me through, or I could take action to protect myself before it was too late for me to do anything. I was 17, so running away wasn't going to be an option, so I wouldn't try to do that. Plus, I was scared of worse consequences if I was caught and brought back into the house. I had almost no plan in mind, but I wasn't ready to give up. I wanted to get out before the abuse got worse. I wanted to have a chance to live a healthy life. I chose to take action and protect myself, and there was one person who I thought would help me. The doorbell to our house rang in about 2 hours. Thankfully, within this time, Mom and Benji had stayed away. From what I could hear, they were busy watching a movie downstairs. Meanwhile, I took the time to pack a bag with essentials and my important documents. I was getting out of the house, and I had someone who was willing to help me. That someone, who was also at the door, was Aunt Helen. Helen might be my mom's twin sister, but they look nothing alike and have different personalities. While Mom had turned into this vile woman, Aunt Helen was an absolute angel. For the longest time, Aunt Helen had been pestering me to tell her what had been going on in my home. She had sometimes seen bruises on me, which she always took pictures of. You know that I always told her that I was being clumsy and hurt myself because of that. I don't think she ever believed me, but she also didn't have any other suspicions to go on. She kept telling me to call her whenever there was a problem at home. I never took up that offer before that night. That night I called her and cried my heart out while telling her everything. She was at my mom's door to take me with her. When I came downstairs, I could see my mom angrily yelling at Aunt Helen. "What makes you think you can take my daughter away? This is not your house, and you don't get to do whatever you want here." "I will do whatever I want, and you will watch, Ruth. I am going to take Harper away since you plan on making her your son's punching bag. Well, that won't be happening on my watch, sister." Where did you hear it? Harper, it was you, wasn't it? You sold us out to my sister. You think she can save you? Just you wait, you stupid girl. You will pay for this. Mom was now looking straight at me with the angriest look on her face. I was scared out of my mind and thought that she might attack me. She was looking really scary. Her tone also wasn't pleasant and had a promise of hell. But this time I knew that Aunt Helen would protect me. She had promised to protect me. I have had enough of this suffering. I wanted it to end. Mom wasn't going to scare me. Mom was actually about to angrily walk up to me when Aunt Helen stopped her and said, "I would choose my words carefully if I was you, Ruth. I will not have you speak to her that way or threaten her. You and your son will never lay a hand on her again. We will see about that." "What are you going to do about it, Helen? Don't tell me how to raise my kid. I can do whatever I want with my daughter." "I don't think CPS will agree with that sentiment, Ruth. I have plenty of proof that there has been abuse going on in your house for a while. I have pictures and everything, not to mention the fact that I see a brand new bruise forming on her neck right now." "Are you threatening me right now, Helen? Do you think that will scare me or something?" "Yes, I am threatening you right now. If you know what is best for you, you will keep your mouth shut. Harper is coming with me, and that's final. If you stir up trouble, I will go straight to the cops." "Fine, then take her. She's useless daughter to me anyway. I have nothing to do with her. Keep this burden with you. As for you, Harper, don't expect me to take you back when you come crawling. You are no daughter of mine anymore." Despite everything, Mom's words hurt me a lot. After I went home with Aunt Helen, I cried into my arms that night. I missed school for 2 whole days because I wasn't in the state of going anywhere. Besides, I was scared of getting into Benji's path, although he was mindful never to abuse or bully me in public. Aunt Helen had also called up my mom and warned her that Benji better not try anything on me at school. I guess that word got across since Benji never physically bullied me. I somehow managed to study my butt off in my final year and managed to get decent marks at graduation. On the day I graduated, I only had my Aunt Helen show up. My mom wasn't even interested in coming, even though I had invited her. She wrote back that she didn't want to embarrass herself by being recognized as the mother of a loser. I was at that point in my life where those words made me angry instead of sad. I had worked hard and had wanted my mom to be at least a little proud of me. She couldn't even do that for me. On the day of my graduation, I saw everyone's classmates' mothers turn up and cheer for their child. It was like a punch to my gut. I was heartbroken but also super angry. That was the day when I made a vow that I would never consider my mom and brother as my family again. And they would never get any kind of help in this lifetime. Years passed. 8 years to be exact. I ended up going to college after my aunt offered to pay for it. She was a single working woman and had some money to offer towards a college fund. She wasn't rich by any means, but was willing to give me her savings so that I could have a nice future. I went to college, took up a minimum wage job, and worked hard to get a degree. I'm proud today that I made it. I got an amazing job after college and ended up buying an apartment after living frugally for a year. I still have the mortgage, though. I also moved Aunt Helen into the apartment since I was planning to get married to my fiancé soon. He had his own house, so my apartment would be sitting empty. I let Aunt Helen live there rent-free to pay her back and thank her for her help. Somehow word got back to my mother and brother that Aunt Helen had been living in my apartment, and soon she would have it all to herself. My mother and brother decided it was time for them to make an appearance in my life. They showed up to my apartment acting like everything was fine. I let him in solely because I had been waiting for the day when I would be able to serve their just desserts. I knew why they were at my place. I said, "Well, you showed up after 8 long years. To what do I owe this pleasure? How are you, Harper? It's been so long since I've seen my daughter. I missed you so much." "Yeah, we missed you, big sister. I really wish we could have kept in touch. The house has been lonely without you in it." "Try again, guys. Everyone knows I wasn't the reason why we lost contact. You want me to remind you two that you could have reached out but never did?" "Oh, come on, Harper. It's been such a long time. Let's not talk about the past. Those were some bad days, but we are over it now. You shouldn't bring up the past after so many years. You know that we are not the same people anymore." So my mother and brother were going to pretend that nothing had happened 8 years ago. They wanted me to let go and pretend that everything was rainbows and sunshine. As usual, they wanted me to sweep everything under the rug for their own benefit. Well, I wasn't going to do that. It was amusing to see them try and dismiss everything, but I wasn't going to let things go after all. So I said, "Quit the pleasantries, Mom. Just tell me what you want. I know for sure that you aren't here because you feel bad about what happened." "Come on, Ruth, you can't keep bringing back the past. We do feel bad about what happened. We can't change that now. But we can try again to be a family. You have made it big, and we're proud of you, Harper. Let's just leave things in the past and move on. We're family, and we should stick together. We are going through tough times, and you should help us out a bit." "Are you referring to the fact that you beat up a girl in college for which you got arrested and sent to jail?" Benji's face went white when I said that. Mom was looking away in shame. I knew all about what those two were up to. Extended family members loved to gossip, and he made headlines in our city. So, my wonderful brother decided to push a girl because she turned him down. I always knew he was violent, but Mom's nonchalance had made him escalate his behavior. Now he was in deep trouble. I heard that Mom had to sell her house to book him out and pay for a good lawyer. He's still looking at a jail term because the girl came from an influential family. Benji had also lost his scholarship, and no one wanted to offer him a job in our small city. So I believe he and our mother were at my place to beg for some kind of help. Mom said, "You already know how tough these times are for us. We thought we could use some of your help." "And what kind of help did you expect from me?" "You must know that I had to sell the house because of what happened. I'm working, but it's getting difficult to rent a place. I was hoping you would let us live with you." So that's why they were at my place. They had expected me to happily let him live with me. I guess they thought that they were as good as my Aunt Helen. The audacity was astounding, and all I could do was laugh and say, "No, I'm not going to let you live with me. What made you think I would just agree to this? This is never going to happen." "What? But why? You were letting Aunt Helen live with you. She's not even your real family. We're your brother and mother." "Are you seriously comparing yourselves to Aunt Helen? How much more delusional can you be? You abused me, Benji. Mom supported you and even encouraged you in the end. Aunt Helen is the reason why I am here. You two are not my family. She is." "How can you say that, Harper? I gave birth to you. You can't just talk to me about a small mistake I made years ago." "I can always count on you to dismiss my traumas. You never really cared about me, did you? All you cared about was your precious son who would make it big. Yes, he did make it big, but probably not in the way you had imagined. Sadly for you, I won't be the one helping you clean his mess." Ruth and Benji looked taken aback by my coldness. I wasn't like this in the past. I was a sweet and caring girl who forgave her family despite what they put her through. But I had learned my lesson the hard way. My family was never going to change. They didn't deserve my love and care. They only deserved my wrath. Benji and Mom realized that, so they proceeded to cry and beg for help. They said, "I know what I did to you and others was wrong, Harper, but please just help me out this time. I'm already paying for my sins." "I don't think that's enough, Benji. You deserve what is coming to you. You deserve it all, and I don't care what happens to you or Mom. She deserves it too." "Please don't say that, Harper. We're your family. You need to help us. We'll do anything." "Sorry, this useless daughter can't help you, Mom. You are not my family. Aunt Helen is my family, along with my fiancé. You two are nothing but a bad past that I won't keep in my life. Now leave my house and don't come back." Benji and my mom really wouldn't take no for an answer. They stayed in my apartment for a while. They kept begging and pleading with me to help them. It was pathetic to see their desperate attempts at trying to make me show mercy. I knew that things were tough for them, which was why they were being so awfully desperate. However, I couldn't bring myself to care because of their horrible behavior towards me. They were in a bad situation of their own making, and I wasn't someone who was going to reward bad behavior. So I remained as hard as stone. In the end, my aunt arrived home and we both kicked Benji and my mom out. When they wouldn't leave and threatened me, I laughed and told them that they shouldn't look for more trouble. My aunt also reminded them that she still had plenty of proof of their abuse towards me and was not unwilling to use it. That made them shut up and leave out of fear. And when they did, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Benji and my mom disappeared from my life altogether. However, I still got to know about their whereabouts from my family. I'm happy to say that Benji has disappeared completely while my mom is still struggling to make ends meet. Apparently, a few days after they left my house, they had a massive fight and Benji ended up hitting my mother. I guess that made her finally see what a monster she had created. She immediately kicked him out of her tiny rented trailer and threatened to take legal action. This time, instead of escalating, Benji decided to go on the run. Mom tried to reach out to me and come back to my apartment for forgiveness, but my aunt showed her the door and told her not to bother me again. I'm so grateful to her for having my back. So this was the tale of how I got rid of my abusive family. I am now happily married with no contact with my mom or brother. I still have a great relationship with my aunt, who I see as a mother right now. My fiancé's family has also taken me in as their own, and I feel it is a reward for me for going through all the struggles in my life. I never planned to get back in contact with my mom and brother, though. They are not worth my time and effort, and they definitely don't deserve to be in my life. I hear that many of you have mother-in-law troubles. Some of you have some horrible stories where you had been downright abused by your mother-in-law. I feel horrible for you guys and can relate to your pain to some extent. Let me introduce myself to you. I am Autumn. I'm a dedicated housewife and have an amazing husband, Dan. We dated straight after college and married after 3 years. The first few months of our marriage were fine, except for the occasional interference from his mom, Kelly. We had no idea back then that she would become a bigger problem for me than I would ever imagine. Before I get into what happened, I think you deserve to have a peek into the backstory. It will be helpful for you to understand exactly what kind of a woman my mother-in-law is. When I first met Kelly, I thought that she was downright hostile towards me. I wasn't expecting that at all, since she had always pestered Dan to introduce us. I genuinely thought that she was happy to see Dan in a great relationship. But I was wrong. She only wanted to meet me so that she could intimidate me. That day, when Dan took a bathroom break, she gave me one of her ugliest looks and said, "You must be thinking how important you are to Dan. You think you are a good girlfriend and will be a good wife. Well, let me tell you that you can't. You will never be as good as me." I'm not trying to compete with you, Kelly. You raised Dan single-handedly after his dad left. I have a lot of respect for you, actually. Good. You are going to need that once you marry Dan. Don't think I would allow you to draw my son away from me. Once you marry him, you will only be a personal maid to him and me. I will make sure of that. I hope you keep that in mind before building castles in the air. I was too shocked to grace her with a reply. The way she said those things was downright vile. By the time I was able to recover from the shock, Dan was back at the table. I observed how effortlessly the mask slipped back on his mom. No, she wasn't smiling fake or being overly cheerful. She was being robotic, but didn't give me any nasty looks while Dan was with us. That night, when I went back home, I knew one thing for sure: Kelly is going to be a problem in my life. Her behavior was outrageous, and it did put some fear into me. She said those things in secret, so I didn't know how to tell Dan. From what I saw, Dan loves his mother a lot and feels indebted to her for raising him. I guess it was actually Kelly's raising that made him think this way, so I wasn't sure Dan would believe me if I told him what happened. Like a stupid idiot, I kept quiet and took all the insults and jibes that Kelly threw at me in private. My only consolation was that Kelly lived separately from us and we were going to have our new place all to ourselves. After we got married for about 4 months, We ended up living in our new house alone. We had some really fun times and married life was treating me well. That was until Dan informed me that his mom would be moving in with us. I couldn't say no because the house belonged to him. Plus, I didn't think Dan would take it well if I had told him to abandon his mom. Apparently, Kelly told him that she had left her job and was about to be homeless. Once Kelly moved in with us, she made my life hell. She would constantly make me worm around the house and run errands for her. When I refused to do something, she would punish me as she pleased. One of the most common methods of her punishment would be throwing away the food I made for my meals. Then she would do stuff like pull my hair and grab my arm really strongly while I wasn't doing housework the way she wanted. After suffering for a few months, I decided to hint to Dan that his mom needed to leave. I said, "I don't know how to put this mildly, but your mom and I are not getting along at all. I don't think I can continue to live with her." "Don't be ridiculous, Autumn. You know that my mom has nowhere to go. She can be a bit strict, but you'll be able to adjust with her." "I tried my best, but she wouldn't budge, Dan. I'm getting tired of dealing with her." "I'm sorry, Autumn. I can't just kick my mom out onto the streets. If she was doing something drastically wrong, it would have been an option, but please just try to adjust and make things a little easier for me. I really don't want to choose between the two of you." I couldn't tell Dan what I was going through with Kelly. He didn't know why I desperately wanted her out of the house. I also didn't push the issue because I could understand Dan's point as well. He wanted to help out his mom. The problem was that he rarely saw anything wrong with her behavior. So proving Kelly's abuse would have been difficult. However, fate found a way. One day, while I was forced to clean the house, I noticed my fake flower pot looking a little weird. It took me a few moments to see the camera that was hiding between the leaves. It was one of those cheap things you buy on Amazon. I knew for a fact that it didn't belong to me or my husband, so there was only one explanation about who put it there. It had to be Kelly. I had no idea why she would do this, but I wanted to find out, so I pretended not to see the camera and cleaned beside the flower pot to avoid suspicion. I also kept thinking about the fact that the camera would be able to catch all the abuse that Kelly was putting me through, so I let it be. It was around 2 days later that Kelly finally revealed why she had planted a camera in my house. She had, very stupidly, declared in front of me and Dan, "I have something to confess, Dan. I hope you will forgive me for it." "What is it, Mom? Don't be so dramatic. I'm sure it can't be that bad." "It is controversial, Dan. I actually secretly put cameras in your house." "What? What are you saying, Mom? Why would you do that?" "I know you might be upset at me, but it was necessary. I needed to show you how incompetent and useless your wife is. I can't believe that you are still with her." "Mom, you are not making any sense. What is going on?" "You need to watch these videotapes and find out, Dan. These are the tapes from the cameras I set up. It was the only way to prove that Autumn was not the right wife for you. You need to watch this and do something about it, Dan." Kelly simply forwarded the video to Dan and demanded that he play the recording. I was sitting next to him and saw the entire thing. It had clear clips of Kelly pulling my hair and dumping my food when I didn't make what she wanted me to make. I was getting traumatized just looking at it again. Meanwhile, my husband watched the video in silence while my mother-in-law sat there smirking at me. I was a little skeptical about what my husband would say when he saw the video. I didn't know if he would take my side or his mom's side. Looking at Kelly's expression, I knew that she expected Dan to side with her. She thought that Dan would agree with her assessment of me and then kick me out as she had imagined. But she didn't know that she was in for a big surprise. Dan finished the video and sat in silence for a while. Kelly was still smirking at me, and I really didn't know what to think. Kelly was getting rather impatient and ended up saying, "So, what do you think, Dan?" "What do you want me to say?" "Well, you should do something. You can't let someone useless and incompetent like Autumn stay in this house. She is not worthy of being your wife. You should kick her out immediately." Really, Mom? You think I would agree with you and kick my wife out? You know who I think should be out of the house? It's you, Mom. Kelly was taken aback when Dan said those words. In her head, she was sure that her precious son would take her side. But Dan showed her the shiny backbone that I had been wishing to see for a while. I guess after seeing those videos, he had finally realized that his mom was as problematic as I had made her out to be. He looked really stricken and equally angry. Kelly was now struggling to form words at his uncleaned reaction. "What are you talking about, Dan? Why would you kick me out? Your wife is the incompetent one in the house." "My wife is not incompetent, and you better stop saying that. The truth is that you are the one who needs to be kicked out. I really have no words left for you, Mom. How could you do this?" "Oh my God, Dan, what is wrong with you? Why are you turning this on me? I haven't done anything." "You haven't done anything, Mom? Are you saying that you didn't abuse my wife in her own home?" I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw that my husband had finally understood what his mom was up to. I was a little reluctant to tell him everything, so the camera did wonders for me. It literally highlighted my struggles with Kelly and showed Dan what a monster his mom was. However, Kelly wasn't having any of it. She threw a massive tantrum and said, "This is ridiculous, Dan. I'm trying to make sure Autumn fulfills her wifely duties, and this is how you treat me? Now you're calling me abusive?" "I am calling you abusive because that's what you are, Mom. These videos clearly show how you have harassed my poor wife day after day under my roof." "Dan, you are not thinking straight. I can't believe that you would side with your wife on this. She has completely poisoned you against me." Now here is where I decided to speak up. I would not have her try to pin all the blame on me again. I was tired of her victimizing herself and blaming me every time Dan tried to be harsh with her. I've had enough, so I said, "Why are you trying to pin the blame on me, Kelly? I didn't tell Dan anything. You were the one who decided to violate my privacy and install secret cameras in my house. You literally ambushed us with the footage, Kelly." "Oh God, it almost didn't cross my mind how grossly you have violated the sanctity of our home. How do you even think that this is okay, Autumn? Why didn't you stop her from doing this?" "I never knew about the cameras, Dan. I won't lie, but I did find them today when I was cleaning the house on Kelly's command. I spotted the camera but pretended to ignore it so that Kelly wouldn't suspect anything." "Will you look at that, Dan? This is all her doing. She intentionally set me up so that I will appear to be an abusive mother-in-law." There it was again. Kelly absolutely won't stop blaming me for everything. I could have easily lied and said that I didn't find out about the camera, but I had enough integrity to speak the truth. Kelly had no such thing and was adamant about shifting blame to save herself. Now that she didn't get her dream reaction from her son, she was trying to victimize herself to escape trouble. But Dan also had enough of her antics. He said, "Are you telling me that my wife somehow made you abuse her? God, that is exactly what an abusive person would say. Did my wife tell you to throw away her food and hit her?" "I only did that because she didn't do what I asked her to. I am the head of the house and she should be listening to me. You know she was going to make a meal that you don't like. She was being a bad wife again by doing something you don't like. I dumped the food to teach her a lesson." "What on earth is wrong with you, Mom? My wife isn't here to cater to all my needs and change her life according to my preferences. She's my wife. She's not a maid. Also, what gave you the right to call yourself the head of the house?" Of course I'm the head of the house, Dan. I'm your mother after all. It's my duty to make sure your wife stays in line." "You are the one who needed to stay in your line, Mom. I can't believe how you have antagonized my poor wife in these 2 days. Who knows how much you had tortured her all this while. I really should have listened to you, Autumn. I am so sorry." Kelly was shocked to see that her son was actually saying sorry to me instead of her. That drove her over the edge. She started to turn on the waterworks since her efforts at victimizing herself weren't working that well. Kelly thought that her tears would melt away Dan's anger immediately. Well, It did most of the time, but my God, my husband was extremely angry at that moment. He looked downright scary and didn't hesitate to put his mom back in her place. He said to her, "I can't believe that you are crying because I gave my wife a well-deserved apology. My son has changed so much, it's hurting me. You are hurting me, Dan. I can't believe you would pick Autumn's side over me. I can't believe you would apologize to her instead of me. You haven't done anything to deserve my sympathy or apology, Mom. I know well enough what you were trying to do, trust me. Victimizing yourself won't work this time. I have had enough. I have absolutely no respect in this house anymore. I guess you'll be happier if I move out. I can see that I am unwanted here. My son doesn't want me in his house anymore. Fine, I will leave. You can say goodbye to your mom forever." "You're right about that, Mom. I don't want you in my house anymore. Not after everything you have done. Good thing that you have decided to move, because I was going to suggest that. Actually, I was going to demand that from you." All of Kelly's plans were getting spoiled. One by one, Dan was destroying all of Kelly's manipulative tactics and had finally asked her to move out of our home. When Kelly talked about leaving, it was actually meant to be a threat. She had expected Dan to embrace her and beg her to stay or something. Dan was so deep in his responsibility towards his mom that he would have done that if not for the video evidence. I was happy to see that once he had confirmation about how horrible his mom was, he was willing to kick her out. But Kelly was shell-shocked by his reactions. She looked at him in disbelief and said, "What, you want me to move out?" "What did you think, Mom? Did you expect me to beg you to stay? Yeah, I won't be doing any of that, so don't hold your breath." "You would really kick me out and choose your stupid wife over me?" "You mean that will I kick out my abusive mom to make sure my wife is safe in her own house? Yes, I will do that in a heartbeat." "How could you even say that, Dan? I'm your mother. You cannot kick me out for a stupid girl like Autumn." "My wife is not stupid, but you definitely were if you had expected me to side with you after watching this video. I don't know in what world you thought doing this was okay. I'm honestly disgusted with you. I want nothing to do with you right now." "You are really going to kick me out?" "Yes. I expect you to leave my house by the end of this month. I will draw up an eviction notice to make things easier. I won't have you in my house anymore." But where will I go, Dan? I have no place to go. I'll be homeless if you kick me out." "You should have thought about that before treating your own daughter-in-law so horribly. I can't believe that you still haven't apologized to her for what you did." Kelly was now starting to realize the gravity of her situation. Dan was serious and wanted her out as soon as possible. He looked really angry and didn't even go to comfort his mom when she cried tears of sorrow. Instead, he reminded her that I deserve an apology from her. Now, Kelly would have died before she had offered me an apology, but she understood that she was on thin ice, so she tearfully said, Okay, I get it, Dan. I guess I'll have to apologize to Autumn now for trying to help you. Fine, if that's what it would take to make things normal, I will do it. Autumn, I'm sorry for what I did to you." "How dare you think I would accept this ridiculous non-apology of yours? It's not even genuine. If it was, I would still never forgive you. I will never forget the things you put me through." "Why are you being so difficult, Autumn? I was only trying to help you be a better wife. It's not my fault that you are too sensitive to criticisms and a little bit of discipline." "Believe me, Kelly, you are only making your case worse. I don't even want to hear you speak right now. If you stay in this house, I will have to leave." "See, Dan, I already apologized to Autumn, but she is being difficult on purpose. You have to see that I am not the problem here. She is the problem. Please don't throw me out because of this." The victim blaming on Kelly's part was never ending. I was still wearily waiting for Dan to give in to his mom's sentimentalities. This time I was determined to leave him if he didn't stand up for me. It would have broken my heart, but I needed to protect myself and walk away before it's too late. But I didn't have to do it because Dan was all in for standing up against his mother. He was spectacular in defending me and taking necessary actions to make sure his mom didn't get away with her antics. He said, "That was the worst apology I have ever heard in my life, Mom. You don't get leeway just because you are my mom. You are somehow still defending your horrible behavior for nothing. I'm done with you. Just leave. Don't come back." No, 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 Dan. Please don't say that. Okay, I'll try to be better and understand. I will treat Autumn like my own daughter now. I'm not really interested in that, Kelly, so it's going to be a hard pass for me. Go find some other victim because I won't be one anymore. I will absolutely not have my wife leave me over you, Mom. The fact that you were being abusive is just the cherry on top. I have had enough of your talking. I will prepare an eviction notice so that you know I'm serious. I want you out by this month. Hearing that, Kelly broke down in a storm of tears. She was crying like an animal and constantly begging us for forgiveness. She had realized a little too late that her own actions would end up coming back to haunt her. Her plan to throw me out of the house failed so miserably that she ended up being the one who was getting kicked out. She remained on the floor, a crying mess, while Dan and I retreated to our bedroom. Once we were in our bedroom, Dan actually looked at me with the saddest eyes I have ever seen on him. I had never seen him so broken before and wished that I didn't ever get to see this again. I could tell the day's events absolutely drained him. He ended up hugging me and said, "I'm so sorry I didn't take your words seriously, Autumn. I really should have done some investigation and found out what was going on." It's okay, Dan. I never did give you the full story, so I understand why you kept dismissing me. I also get it that you wanted to take care of your mom. Why didn't you tell me everything, Autumn? I swear I would have kicked her out once I had known that she was abusing you. There are several reasons for that, Dan. I thought that I could handle her on my own. I thought you loved your mother and all these truths would have hurt you. Plus, I didn't have any concrete evidence of what she was doing. Well, I'm not feeling very loving towards her right now. If you ever find yourself in this situation again, promise me you will tell me everything. I will not let you be abused by anyone. As for my mom, I was serious about what I said. I will be kicking her out for good. I am going to protect you at all costs. I was so happy to hear my husband say that he would protect me. When he told me that he would really kick out his mom, the decision was sealed. He was going to go through with it. I was finally starting to have some hope in my life, and I was praying to God that my bad days had ended on that day. All I had to do was wait and watch justice play out for me. Kelly was going to get her karma. Dan ended up going to a lawyer and getting an eviction notice, and the very next day, Kelly was trying to ignore what happened the other night and was acting super sweet towards both of us. However, I knew that it was all a front since she didn't want to get kicked out. I was still wary of being around Kelly, so Dan ended up inviting my sister over to stay with me for a month till Kelly had moved out. He didn't trust his mom not to hurt me when we went off to work. When he returned from work that day, he had the eviction papers in his hands. It was definitely my best day ever. I will give you only a brief version of what happened after Kelly was given the eviction notice. She went into full tantrum mode and did everything she could think of. She screamed, cried, threatened, begged, and even called up family members for help. Well, very few people ended up taking her side. Even from them, many pulled back from her when they were shown the evidence of what she did to me. So it's safe to say that her own family is pretty disgusted with her antics, and, very unsurprisingly, no one was willing to take her in. Since Dan refused to give her any money, Kelly ended up crashing at her sister's place for a while. She later had to get a job because her sister wouldn't have her mooching off her. They had a strong bond, but being around each other 24/7 has started to affect their relationship as well. We haven't made any contact, so Dan does get some crying calls from Kelly about how horrible her life was. She has begged to come back several times, but has been told in no uncertain terms that it won't be happening. As for me and Dan, we have joined therapy to figure out our problems in the marriage and develop better communication. It's been a year and we have made a lot of progress. Honestly, life is good, and for now, I can live stress-free in my house. I, Jessica, was the breadwinner of the house when I was married to my husband, John. I won't exactly call myself the breadwinner because my husband did have a job and contributed. However, his salary was way less than mine, so I ended up paying for most of our things. I never had a complaint about that because he was my husband. However, I did draw the line when his mom, Tanya, would ask me for handouts. Here is one thing I should tell you guys about Tanya. She absolutely hated me. She hated the fact that I earned more than her son and her husband. In fact, she often told me that a bimbo like me should never be able to get her hands on so much money. Thankfully, my husband was always quick to defend me and shut her up. It also helped that my father-in-law, Henry, was a great guy and always stood up for me. John and I had a pretty good relationship throughout the years. We married fairly early since I was financially well settled and wanted to start a family early. John was completely on board as well. We stayed in the house that I bought before we got married. It had a mortgage, but I was able to pay for it just fine. That was another thing that bothered Tanya a lot. One day, she said, "It's so unfair that a dumb girl like you gets to live in a house like this. Meanwhile, hard-working people like us still have to rent." I must say that I am lucky to be able to buy a good house, but I don't appreciate how you called me dumb and undeserving, Tanya. Who cares about what you think? Some women like you can just bat their eyes at their bosses and get great jobs, while men like John and Henry are stuck in low-paying jobs just because they are men. That is very unfair of you to say, Tanya. Jessica is a smart woman and has a college degree as well. That's why she's able to get such a good job. It's all her own skills and has nothing to do with what you are saying. Dad's right, Mom. Jessica is not dumb and did not get her degree by batting her eyes at people. You need to tone it down a little, Mom. Tanya was always jealous of me and my life, which I'm sure is apparent from this exchange. That was something I never found amusing. It gave way to bad relationships, and I really did want Tanya to like me. However, eventually her hate for me made me step away from her. But Tanya never stopped asking me for favors, which sometimes I just did because John pleaded with me. The real trouble began when my mother passed away, leaving me with a fairly decent inheritance. Not in millions, but good enough for middle-class people like me. After my mom passed away, I was in a terrible mental state. She was my last living family member, and her death really shook me up. John was of great help during this time and supported me as best he could. However, what annoyed me was that he constantly kept bringing up my inheritance. He said things like, "So, have you thought more about your inheritance?" "What should I think about it, John? I have put it in a separate bank account and that's it." "Yeah, I know that already, Jessica, but surely you have some plans for it. It's a lot of money, so you have lots of options to consider." "Look, John, I don't care about the inheritance right now. I'm already having a hard time getting over my mom's death. The inheritance is the last thing I want to worry about." "I know that you haven't been able to make hard decisions like this, Jessica. I care about your mental health, so I don't want you to stress about it. That's why I've been thinking on your behalf about what to do about it." Conversations like these have happened a lot of times already. I was getting sick of it, and John just wouldn't stop pushing. So one day I took up his offer to talk and said, "I have a feeling you want to tell me something about the inheritance. Whatever it is, just spit it out. There is no reason to skirt around the topic." "I'm glad you want to hear me out, Jessica. Trust me. I have come up with a brilliant idea. Mom has been looking at some houses, but they are sadly out of my parents' budget. So I was thinking, why don't we help them out with the down payment and furniture?" "Are you kidding me right now, John? I'm not buying your mean and shameless mother a house. What makes you think I would agree with this?" "Why don't you agree with this, Jessica? You know Mom and Dad want to buy a house. When Mom is looking at houses within their budget, it is falling short of her expectations. It's hard for her to see you have such a nice house while she has to compromise." "Well, if she can't compromise, she needs to get a job for herself. She stopped working out of her own free will, so she can definitely start again. She can earn her own house, just like I did. I'm not giving anything to that vile woman after how she treats me." John and I had a huge fight about this issue. However, since it was my inheritance, John had to relent because he couldn't do anything about it. My money was already in the private bank account that he couldn't touch anyway, not that I didn't trust him. I was just super hurt by the fact that my husband would bother me about these things when I was mourning. It hadn't even been a month at that point, and he was thinking about making me give his mom a house with my dead mom's money. It was just ridiculous. Eventually the fights died down and we made up. John apologized for springing his idea up on me and told me that he wouldn't push it. I was stupid enough to take his word for it. John did stick to his word and didn't bring up the issue again. In fact, the problem solved itself when John told me that Tanya was back working so that they could save up for a house they liked. I was glad that we were not fighting about this anymore. But my peaceful life changed when I heard my husband talk in his sleep. He had this habit and did it at times when he was super stressed. I knew how to deal with him properly. However, that night, I just didn't expect him to say what he said in his sleep. "Mom, why are you stressing so much? You're making me more anxious with your stress." "Hey, honey, what's wrong?" "Oh, you have to wake up. It's just a dream." "You are overthinking this, Mom. We have everything under control. She isn't smart enough to figure it out." "John, you really need to—" "Mom, relax. The bimbo will never have a clue about how we spent her inheritance. You're worrying for no reason. I'm handling everything." The rest of his words were too slurred to make sense. I honestly felt like I was caught in a trance. I didn't know if I was hearing things or if my husband had seriously just called me a bimbo. Yes, I happen to be blonde, but as you can see from my career, I am a dumb girl as my husband was making out to be. In fact, my husband had never actually talked to me like that before. Most of the time he praises me even when his mother demeaned me. I thought he was being a caring husband by standing up for me. But the words he said in his sleep were making me question everything. That night, I pondered over it until it was morning. I went off to work trying to delude myself into thinking that my husband was just having a stupid dream. But there was also that possibility that my husband was paranoid and stressed about something which made him talk in his sleep. He kept talking about how I would never find out what happened to my inheritance. That was starting to really bother me, so very impulsively, while at work, I pulled up my bank account to see if anything was amiss. My heart sank when I saw that my account was missing quite a lot of money. My eyes were bulging out of my sockets and I started to hyperventilate right in the break room. John's words from last night came rushing back to me and I felt like I had lost the ground beneath my feet. Thankfully, lunch was almost over, so no one was around to witness my little breakdown. I sat in the break room in shock while trying to calm myself down and think straight. I knew then and there that John and Tanya had planned something. I needed to dig deeper and get to the bottom of it. For some odd reason, my mind kept telling me that this had something to do with Tanya and Henry's new house. So after I left work, I called Henry and told him that we needed to talk. I said, "I'm sorry to be disturbing you like this, Henry, but there is something I need to know. Have you guys needed money recently?" "What? No, there's nothing like that. We're doing well enough right now." I'm sure there hasn't been an emergency cash crisis in your life, but what about the house? Did you by any chance fall short of cash or maybe ran into some trouble that required money? I'm sorry for being so blunt and invasive, but I need to know.
I don't know what to tell you, Jessica. Nothing shady is going on right now. The house is coming along fine. John is being such a good son in helping us pay for our new house. We don't have to worry about that at all.
Wait, what? John has been helping you pay for the house? I was dumbstruck with this new information that wasn't known to me at all. All this while, I knew that it was Tanya and Henry who were paying for their own house. Now, Henry was saying that John was also helping him pay for the house. My mind was a mess while I tried to figure out what was going on. Meanwhile, Henry understood that there was something amiss and said, "What's the matter, Jessica? You seem to be surprised at the fact that John is helping us pay for our house." "I am surprised about this, Henry. I never knew that John was helping you pay for the house." "You didn't know? But John would have told you, I'm sure. He has given us money for the down payment of the house. We are only a few steps away from closing the sale." "I had no idea about this, Henry. John never told me that he was helping you with the down payment. All this while I knew that Tanya went back to work and together you two managed to fund your new house." "What are you talking about, Jessica? Tanya's not working. She's still a stay-at-home wife. She never went back to work." Henry seemed as surprised as I was with everything that had been unraveled in our unprompted conversation. My mind was now spinning with all this new information. Even Henry was taken aback and starting to notice that something was terribly wrong. I said, "So you're telling me that Tanya never went back to work? She's still unemployed? And Henry is paying for your house?" "Yes, Jessica, that's what I know. What gave you the idea that Tanya had gone back to work and she was contributing?" "It was John and Jessica who told me about it. I didn't assume anything, Henry. I'm telling you what I was told."
"What on earth is going on here? Why would they lie about this to you? This is so confusing."
Henry was now racking his brain trying to figure out what was going on. I was finally starting to realize that we had both been lied to. My mother-in-law was faking her job to throw off any suspicions that I might have. Meanwhile, my husband had lied to his dad, saying that he was helping them pay for the house. Turns out me and Henry both didn't know that his house was being funded by my inheritance money. And it was being done without my permission. There is something really fishy going on, Henry. That's why I called you in the first place. Last night I heard John talk in his sleep again. He said that I would never find out what he and Tanya did with my inheritance. Today I checked and saw that a good chunk of my inheritance is gone from my account. So my son doesn't have enough money to make the down payment? But Tanya said that he got a promotion. Also, how did your money disappear like that? I have no idea, Henry. I'm starting to think that John and Tanya are behind this. Look, John doesn't earn enough to pay your down payment. Tanya lied to you. John didn't get any promotion in the last 5 years. You were saying that Tanya is not also working? Then where is the money coming from, Henry? Oh, God, Jessica, you might be right. Maybe John did end up taking your money. There can be no other explanation for this right now. We have both been deceived, Jessica. I don't know what to do now. Well, I need to first find solid proof that it was indeed my husband and Tanya who made this whole plan. I also need to know how they managed to get into my private bank account to steal my money. Henry agreed with my plan and promised not to confront Tanya and John right now. I also promised him that I would inform him about my findings soon. Henry is a very good guy who genuinely doesn't take handouts. He is the hard-working type of guy who likes to live life by his means. Since he loves his son so much, he probably couldn't say no when he insisted that he would help. Plus, I found out that Tanya had also faked John's promotion to Henry so that he wouldn't get suspicious about where my husband was getting the money. John and Tanya had cleverly planned everything and kept us both in the dark. They played us for fools. It took me days to find out the whole truth of the matter. My suspicions were right. John and Tanya did end up withdrawing money from my bank account, specifically from the one where I kept my inheritance. I didn't have a message alert switched on, so I wasn't immediately aware of the withdrawal. I went to the bank and was told that someone showed up as me, signed papers, and made a check withdrawal. They refused to allow me to see who did it because they needed a police report for that. But in my mind, I knew that it was my husband and Tanya. Tanya actually had a similar build to me and the same hair color. So to a bank employee who has seen me only once, this may not have been suspicious. Henry and Tanya took advantage of my deteriorating mental state to make their own dreams come true. I was enraged beyond belief. I told Henry everything, and together we made a plan. Henry drove Tanya to our house while I was waiting with John to welcome them. John and Tanya only knew that we were having a family dinner and nothing more. However, when we sat down to dinner, I said, "Hey, John, you know I found out something terrible yesterday? Someone has taken out money from my bank account." "What? Who would do that, Jessica? What account is this?" "The one where I kept my inheritance money, John. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about calling the police tomorrow." No. Why do you need to do that? I'm sure you have replaced the money somewhere or withdrawn from it accidentally. There's no reason to assume the worst. Yes, give it some time, Jessica. I'm sure there's an explanation about what happened to the money. There's no reason to involve the cops right now. John and Tanya looked pretty shocked and scared when I brought up the issue. It was clear to me and Henry that they hadn't expected to get caught so easily. I don't know what they had planned to do once I found out about the withdrawal, but I knew that they hadn't expected it to happen so soon. They visibly panicked and jumped right off their chair when I mentioned getting the cops involved immediately. It was a little funny, but Henry and I maintained our comparison. He even looked at Tanya funny and said, "I don't see why she shouldn't involve the cops straight away. The sooner this is solved, the better." "Dad, you don't understand. These things are very sensitive since it's about money. Jessica's already in a very vulnerable state right now. Let's not make her stress more." "Oh, I'm pretty stressed about the money, actually. I would rather have my money safely back in my account as soon as possible." "Yeah, go ahead and file a police report, Jessica. You deserve to have your money back. You know what? Since you are so vulnerable right now, I will even go with you to the police station." John and Tanya were getting paler and paler by every passing second. They were gulping hard and looking at each other while trying to figure out how to stop us. I was watching them panic and fall into the trap they had set for me. I wanted to laugh at the way they were behaving, but my anger clouded over all my other emotions. I wanted to yell at them for being nasty thieves, but I couldn't do that yet. After a lot of back and forth, I said, "I don't think there's a reason for me to waste time anymore. I will be going to the cops for sure." "Don't be so rash, Jessica. Just leave it alone. Can't you just sleep on it for a few days?" "No, I don't think I can. The more I think about it, the more I'm bothered by this. Actually, why don't we go to the cops right now and get this out of the way? It's only 5 p.m. now. We'll be back in time for dinner." "Seems like a good idea, Jessica. Let's just go down to the police station right now. John and Tanya can catch up in the meantime." Henry and I were starting to walk out the door when John and Tanya stopped us. They finally realized that their game was up. It was time for them to confess, and they did. My husband and mother-in-law were looking down at the floor the whole time while they told us what they had planned. They had planned to use my money to fund their house. In the end, I said, "Why did you do this, John?" "I always dreamed of buying a house for my parents, but I knew I couldn't afford it. I asked you for help, Jessica, but you didn't want to give me your money, so I had to do this. I only wanted to do something nice for my parents." "What you did was wrong, John.
We never asked you for anything, John. I don't know what made you think we needed a big house. But knowing Tanya, I think it was your mother who demanded that you get her a big house.
Can you really blame me, Henry? All I wanted was to live in a nice house like my son. If a stupid bimbo like Jessica can stay in a house like this, why can't I?
Careful there, Tanya. Don't forget the fact that you stole from me and committed a lot of crimes by doing so. If I want to, I can go to the cops and get you arrested. Tanya was being a witch to me even after getting caught, so I quickly reminded her of the fact that I still had the power to get her arrested. That's when the tear works and begging started. Tanya suddenly realized she was in deep trouble. She had tears in her eyes and quickly changed tune to say,
Okay, I'm sorry, Jessica. It was a big mistake. We are family, so let's just forgive each other. There's no reason to get the cops involved.
Mom is right, Jessica. No matter what, she's still your family. You shouldn't be threatening her like this.
Oh, you have a problem with me threatening your mother, John? Well, guess what? I can threaten you too.
If I make a police complaint, you will be arrested as well.
I don't think Henry will be here to bail any of you out.
Yep. I was running away as far as I could. In fact, after today, I want nothing to do with John or Tanya anymore. Tanya's entitlement has always been a problem, but she went too far this time. I've made the decision to separate from her now. I don't want to be with someone so vile and cruel.
Same here, Henry. I guess we will both be looking at divorce lawyers soon. I'm done with you, John. Don't think I will let you get away with this. You and your mom called me a bimbo and tried to scam me while I was vulnerable. I will now show you what happens when you mess with me.
John and Tanya were now looking at me and Henry with pure fear. They hadn't realized that the day would turn out to become their worst nightmare. Tanya was now begging Henry not to leave her while John was trying to get my attention as I started to walk away from him. He was on the verge of tears and kept saying sorry repeatedly over and over again. John and Tanya even promised to give me the money back so that we could go back to normal. I laughed at that and didn't even bother to reply. The real fun happened when there was a knock at the door. When John went to open the door, he was greeted by 2 cops who were at the door to arrest him and Tanya. That's right, guys. I had already called the cops on them after filing a police report that morning. There was no space for any compromise. I went ahead with the police report as soon as I mustered the courage to end my marriage. Henry agreed with my decision and accompanied me as well. Tanya and John did throw mini tantrums when escorted to the cop cars, but no one paid any heed to them. Due to some complications, John and Tanya ended up spending the night in jail. John was released the next day on bail since he paid out of pocket, but Tanya remained in jail because Henry wasn't busting her out. John returned home and tried to beg me to stay. I informed him that I had already called a lawyer and told him to prepare the divorce papers, and I was going forward with my case against them too. There was no changing my mind. John did end up transferring my money back once he got out of jail. I informed the cops about it, but the case of identity theft and document forgery was still on. As I write this story, Tanya has been granted bail by some family members, but is miserable because Henry is divorcing her. We live in an at-fault divorce state, so both Henry and I are going to make it big in the divorce. John and Tanya are looking at a small prison sentence and a good fine right now. Let's also add the fact that they are completely alone now that their spouses are divorcing them. Henry and I compared notes and found out that John and Tanya no longer speak to each other because they ended up blaming each other for what happened. So, their nasty plan never made them heroes, and in the end, landed them in prison.